Who will prompt? English, Swahili. Okay. Okay, as directed by the Deputy Registrar of the High Court, in preparation for our appearance before the bench, which is yet to give us any directions, I have submitted the copies of the pleadings the petitioners are relying on to make the case that to make the case on two fronts. One, that the process of making the budget was irregular and was done outside the law. And two, that the budget itself, the contents of the budget are to some extent fraudulent. There's what we call budgeted corruption within that budget, which if removed, then Kenyans will not have to pay through the nose, the way we are being forced to pay. So that's why we took the trouble to produce the evidence, which runs to 2,365 pages, to show that the budget-making process in Kenya is totally unconstitutional. It violates the Constitution. It violates the Public Finance Management Act. It violates the Public Finance Management Regulations 2015. And it violates many other laws that govern this country. We have also, within that, we have been able to isolate clear cases of budgeted corruption, whereby money is placed in the budget with no corresponding expenditure that benefits the public. So we hope that when we get to the bench, we'll have the chance, me and my co-petitioners, to demonstrate to Kenyans that we have got to the point whereby now we must do things according to the Constitution. The Constitution is not just a decorative document, it's the absolute law. And anything that goes against the Constitution must not be tolerated. Whether the heavens fall or not, the Constitution must come out supreme. So that's what we have done today, and we have discharged as petitioners. We have discharged our part of the requirement that we file our documents. And we wait for the court to give us directions as to when the hearing will commence. There have been no direction so far. We were only told to bring our pleadings, which on the behalf of the 7 petitioners, I have brought my pleadings. But as you are aware, after I and my co-petitioners filed our petition 181 of 2023, alongside our petition as the lead file. So we are still waiting for, we undertake to keep the timelines imposed on us by the court. Well, there was a pending appeal to vacate the orders. You know, we are enjoying the orders that the Honorable Thande gave us, suspending the finance dependent. So the government, exercising their right of appeal, moved to the Court of Appeal to lift those orders. So the Court of Appeal will make a determination on Friday, the 28th. Since we have already argued in the Court of Appeal, my focus and that of my co-petitioners is on the petition that's before the court. Constitution that prescribes, is very prescriptive on how a budget should be made. And we want to hold this budget against that Constitution to demonstrate to the court and the people of Kenya that the government did not follow the prescription in the Constitution for making a budget. And number 2, we also want to show that it's the civil servants in the treasury, the technocrats who prepare these things. I don't know that the politicians are involved, but at this stage I would want to blame the technocrats for padding the budget with the expenditure that is not going to benefit the public. And as a result, we end up with a very, very high a very, very high taxation regime to finance fraud, very deliberate fraud. That's what we want to demonstrate in the courts, and I hope that going forward, Kenya will be a different place. Our money will be respected, our taxes will be imposed strictly in compliance with the Constitution, and the budget-making process will not be used to steal from struggling Kenyan taxpayers. That's our ultimate goal.
Last evening, you talked about the debt that was put at 9.6 trillion.
Yes.
Last time, you told us that money was borrowed by individuals, not Kenyans, because there are no corresponding...
Well, there are dimensions of this debt that we call the debt. When you look at it, the law is very clear that for government to borrow, it must have the approval of parliament. And number two, it can only borrow to finance two things. One, development, and two, short-term cash flow challenges, which should be, let's assume there's a delay in collecting tax, and the tax is due. The government can borrow some little money, continue operating, and when the taxes come, it pays off. It doesn't become a public debt. But you'll find that we have got things called the treasury bills and treasury bonds, which have been used to borrow money that does not go into any development. If you look at that money, it goes to no development, and the domestic debt is never approved by parliament, the debt. And this is a scheme that I believe involves local banks. It involves some state corporations, which take money that are used to do operations to go buy treasury bills and treasury bonds. And it involves some well-connected individuals. And I think as we stand today, in the last 9 years, we have paid about 2.6 trillion in interest on this kind of unauthorized borrowing. So the money they steal really becomes the interest that we are forced to pay on those loans that we don't require to do anything, that are borrowed domestically and are borrowed illegally. Because when you make a budget, the law requires that the budget be balanced. And from our taxes, we are supposed to finance our recurrent expenditure and also to finance our development expenditure. And where there's a deficit, the deficit should be on the development side, so that we now borrow to finance development. And you'll find that even in the current budget, if you look at the development side of things, it's well balanced. The borrowings are there, the loans are already declared, which are going to be the finance ABCD. So there's no deficit in the budget. So the question is, if through taxation we are raising enough money to pay our current expenditure and part of our development expenditure, why are we going onto the domestic market to borrow money that we don't need and pay heavy interest on that money? It can only be a scam involving local banks, involving civil servants in the treasury and other places where the finances are controlled, involving some state corporations which also participate in a big way in this treasury, in the treasury bills and stuff. Otherwise, I don't see how you can generate a deficit in the current budget, whereby the budget is tied to projects, and the deficits are already taken care of by the loans that we get. The other area that in the budget, and if you look at the budget today, you'll get what they call appropriation in aid. The big budget of the loans we get are also unconstitutional to the extent that no money comes into Kenya. The money remains offshore, and they're called appropriation in aid, whereby somebody says we are giving you a loan of 10 shillings, but if you look at the current Appropriation Act, most of the loans that are coming in are appropriation in aid. It means they are bringing the debt to Kenya, not the money. And that's how we are ending up in this kind of mess. And also, if you look at it also earlier on, as I said, when you look at the debt registers, and you look at the payments we're supposed to have made, you'll also find that we have overpaid these funny debts that we are having. So there's a time that this country we should look at each other in the eye and say that we have a law and let us follow the law and save this republic from collapse. Because if we don't do that, it's going to collapse. Right now, when President Ruto took over, the exchange rate between the Kenya shilling and the Uganda shilling, I use Uganda because I come from Busia, was 36 shillings. 2 days ago, I made a transaction on the board, and the exchange rate was 20 shillings. So if the economy is bad all over the world, why is the Ugandan economy appreciating against ours? And Uganda is a very tiny economy. Why is it appreciating against ours? So things are not well, and we need to have an honest discussion. Forget about everything else and say, let us fix the economy. Without the economy, we have got no nation. That's all. Thank you very much, because the reinforcements in my office where I keep most of my stuff was not breached. So not much was stolen, but the police are investigating, and have told us they will tell us who did it. But nothing, I think, of value was lost, other than the electronics that were taken.
You said we have
You said that somebody attempted to pledge 200 million so that you can drop the case.
Yeah, there was that. Yeah? Yeah, it's a correct position. I was offered the money incremental until it reached 200 million, and I told them, that's not the currency in which I have. I want to keep my country, you keep your money. I keep my country, you keep your money. And I told the fellows, if you can't govern, get out of power and give those who can govern the chance to govern, not to come and try to entice me and confuse me with money. A lot of money that I even don't know what I can do with that money if you gave it to me today.
Was the money wired?
No, the money was not given to me. I refused. They were trying to negotiate. They can't receive the money, but they were trying to negotiate, and they kept on adding, and I told them, it's not a question of money, it's a question of the rule of law. Yeah. I'm doing this thing it's out of conviction, not cash. It is for conviction, not for cash, that I do what I do. Thank you very much.